Let's back up a little bit to building one of these things. And Leslie, I want to talk to you about this. There is a concern, so we've got these digital assistants or robots, and they're pulling from data and they're making choices. What are some of the rules? I mean, do you have to, I mean, basically, is it just a set of, it's like, here's the robot, here's the data, off you go?
Yeah, there have to be rules, and we're very slow in inventing rules for new technologies. We tend to go, gee whiz, this is an emerging technology and it has all these benefits, and then we later discover all these unintended consequences, many of which are not that good very often, socially might be quite damaging. I think mobile phone, for example, is massively used, but we're discovering that it's quite addictive, that it's physically harming people if they're overusing this, and there are a lot of problems with it. So we need to start thinking about the rules at the front end. I think the promising thing about AI in the strong sense is that it's not really here yet, so we have a chance to jump in and start thinking these issues through, looking at previous technology and saying, well, what are the rules? What are the ethics? And I think an interesting indicator of that we're doing that is, well, there was recently a House of Lords report that studied for a year and came out with some ethical guidelines. But also, people are already questioning the opaqueness of these algorithms. They're saying, we need to know how they made this decision or came to this conclusion. So it's quite expensive at the moment, but they're trying to work out how you can get that transparency from the algorithm. Part of it could be about reverse re-engineering. Part of it is knowing exactly what the path is through and how it arrived at. But people are working on it. That's the promising thing. And of course, algorithms are not that massively used yet.
Right.
We're still at an early stage. I find that quite promising, given what happened on previous rounds of technologies where people didn't care what the social and economic consequences, ethical consequences were.
Yeah. Right, and to your point, it sounds like we're at an early enough stage that we don't have that situation of, oops. I mean, we just went through a whole bunch of development conferences with all the major companies, and virtually every one of them echoed your point that, oops, we've gone a little far. Here are all the tools we're going to give you now to roll back a little bit. But it sounds like we have time here to sort of build smarter up front.
Yeah, I think so. Although some of our recent research, I think it was close to 90% of the CIOs, who participated were saying that, they were already bumping up against, concerns from an ethics perspective. Right. Based on just how far they've gone today in terms of their implementation of these technologies.
Are those real concerns? Are they concerns based on something that's actually happened, or is it simply the fear factor growing because maybe employees or customers are seeing more implementations?
No, these are real concerns.
Yeah. But they're concerns based on anything that's happened?
Exactly, things that they feel have happened that make them think, oh my goodness, we need to think about what we're doing here in terms of the ethical concerns. There's, Leslie says, one of the things you need to watch with the algorithms is the algorithms, can be biased, right, based on the data that they're analysing as well. So you do need to, or the person who's trained them.
What data you put through.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So it's
because that's something that's interesting is that even all these companies often have a lot of data. They're bringing in, they set up these systems. They want to bring in new data, right? Yeah. New data that helps it be more intelligent. And it sounds like, Pat, that's kind of a critical moment, when you're bringing in the new data that's training these systems to know that it's clean or it's clear.
Well, one of the interesting side benefits of digital workers and robotics is all of the data that they create, because they're systematically monitoring every single thing they do, every single action they take, and every micro action.
And responses to the actions
and the responses to that. So you're moving from sort of data which is sort of the end state, there's the data at the start, something happened, and there's the end data. You've now got all of the actions and the data of what happened in between. So you've got transactional data now as well. And so the robots are creating incredible knowledge this really atomic level knowledge of the business activity, what's actually happening. And then you can start to look at that as a way to either self-improve the process, but what I believe is the best way is for the robot to suggest an improvement, for a human operator to then assess whether that would be a good thing to put into production. So this is the supervised learning versus unsupervised, deterministic versus non-deterministic. And that was the point you made, Leslie, is it has to be deterministic in nature. You can't just have we didn't give the person the loan because the computer said no.
Right.
You've got to know why,
There has to be reasons.
Yeah.
So the reasons, Leslie, is that a moment when an actual human comes in, or do you think that we can build systems that can also come up with that reason?
Well, from a customer experience perspective, it's better taken from a human being who has some
Yeah,
empathy,
I would get the loan.
about saying, it's no.
Right.
There are ways of saying no, and machines don't have the best ways of saying no. I always talk about the cat on the roof analogy. If you want to give people bad news, it's best not to give them it all in one go. You say, well, the cat's on the roof, or the cat's near the edge. The cat's pretty agile. You only tell them the cat's fallen off and's died much later on. Human beings are very good at that. Machines are not good at that.
Right, they'll just
and
give
they can
the
never
hard
do
news,
that.
right.
And yeah, it's a fundamental issue about customer service.
I think it's an opportunity as well for new skills.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
New skills from humans.
Yeah. In terms of analysing, the decisions and things that are being made as a result of the algorithms, checking for bias potentially, and again, it's something that we have to think about as a systems integrator as we look at implementing these systems. How do we make sure as we test, that we're also making sure that we're testing that aspect, testing for bias potentially.
And more data comes in over time, and the AI gets maybe more intelligent, but do you recommend that there is always somebody who is like the caretaker of that robotic process, because it's not static, and it's going in one direction, and maybe that is some sort of weird reinforcement that's happening, and how is that going to be caught unless there's a human?
There's something around curation, isn't there? In terms of data curation.
I think that's right. Which has a huge ethical dimension.
That's right.
And certainly a data privacy dimension, because the regulation insists on it.
Yeah. So yeah.
But we talk about humans in the loop, and there needs to be humans in the loop in terms of the activity with the customer,
Right.
but human in the loop in terms of how the heuristics are built, and how the robots are configured. And so we always say that there has to be human oversight. There can never be a machine making an autonomous decision and changing its own programming, changing its own based on its own observation. It can suggest a change,
Right.
but a person should always make that decision.
Who has
Because if
the
you
full
get it,
context.
because if you get it into a loop and then you become non-deterministic, you have no idea how it reached that conclusion. And actually, there was a very interesting experiment where they got two computers to talk to each other, and within a minute they'd learned their own language. They developed a totally new way of talking to each other that nobody could understand.